Our next case is Mr. Carlton B. Taylor Jr. Mr. Taylor, would you please give us your full name and DOC number?
Carlton B. Taylor, 113532.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, let me explain our procedure to you. I'm going to read some information into the record. Then we're going to conduct a parole interview with you. And at the appropriate time, those persons who wish to have input will speak. On your behalf, you have speaking today, Mr. Kenny Cox, who is present here at headquarters, Ms. Valerie Cox, who is present here at headquarters. Also appearing, but not speaking, is Carlton Taylor Jr., Candy Cox, Johnny Cox, and there at the facility with you is your attorney, Ms. Katrina Jackson. We also have speaking in opposition, Ms. Nancy Scheider, and she is on Zoom. Do you understand our procedure?
Yes, sir.
This is the matter of Carlton B. Taylor Jr., DOC number 113532, date of birth, September the 21st of 1955. He is serving a life sentence on the charges of aggravated burglary and first-degree rape. His sentencing date was May the 22nd of 1986. Is that information basically correct, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir.
Your case has been assigned. The case has been assigned to Mr. Pete Freeman. He's going to begin our interview process. Would you please answer any questions he might have?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, how old are you?
I'm 6'8".
Okay, and how many years have you served on this charge?
38.
Okay, what's your educational level?
12th grade.
Okay. Tell me, what happened? What went on?
Leading up to the crime, I left my residence en route to Mansfield to a friend's house, and en route there I was, drinking a little Crown Royal and Coke. But once I got to my friend's place, I experienced some cocaine for the first time. And upon leaving my friend's place, I went to the victim's place, Miss Watson, and knocked. We had been talking, knowing one another off and on for several months. But when I knocked, nobody answered, and I turned to leave the residence, but I noticed the window and entered in through the window, and into the residence, and she was lying on the couch, and waking her, and we had one or two, kisses, and from there, things that got out of hand. We started having intercourse, and she told me to stop, but I didn't. I ended up raping her, and that's basically, what's happened.
Did you have a knife?
By me, I don't recall having a knife, but I was charged with having a knife. So by me, my ability being impaired a little bit, somewhat by the drugs. So yes, I'm assuming I had a knife.
Okay, what was your job at that time? What did you do for a living?
I was working for CLECO, Central Louisiana Electric Company. I was a meter reader. That's what I started out as, a meter reader.
Have you, did you have other problems with the law concerning reading meters and going to women's houses?
Excuse me? Can you repeat that?
Ever before with attempted aggravated rape?
He said, were you ever charged with attempted aggravated rape?
Well, during the process, when I was locked up for the charge I'm on, Red River Parish had brought charges against me. You know, it's charges that I had nothing to do with.
So you claim you had nothing to do with those other charges.
That's correct.
Did you know the victim of the other charges?
I'm not,
Her meter also.
excuse me?
Was she part of your job also, the other victim?
He's saying that you read her meter as well. I apologize. I should have started off with this, but didn't interrupt. I'm going to reiterate some of your questions. Mr. Taylor comprehends well. However, his right ear, he has a right hearing impairment. He's had about 3 surgeries to remove 2 surgeries to remove tumors from his brain, and has a current tumor on his neck. And so sometimes, you know, I will reiterate your questions. And I should have said that at the beginning. I apologize. He's asked me, did the one that you were falsely charged with, did you read her meter as well?
No. No, because it was in a different parish, I'm
You have to
thinking.
answer him.
No, sir, not that I can recall. I'm not clear on that question.
So you didn't know
On
Miss
the question.
Did you know Miss Watson?
Miss Watson,
Yes.
the victim in this crime? Yes, I did.
No, the victim in this crime was Miss Watson. Did you know
Yes, I knew her.
so what happened to the other charges? You said you had nothing to do with them, correct?
He needs to talk to them. He's not clear on the other charges. Those charges were dismissed. He was found to be innocent. They were dismissed without trial or anything, is my understanding.
Okay, you said you were drinking. How often did you drink?
Just casual, like maybe like on Fridays and Saturdays, sometime on Sundays.
Okay, and you said you did cocaine that night?
Yes, for the first time, that was my first time ever trying it.
It just happened to be that night that it was the first time you tried it. You said you knocked on the door. What time was it when you were knocking on the door?
Thinking back, I want to say it probably was around 10 or 10:15, maybe 10:30. I'm not trying to be, trying to be sarcastic or anything, but I'm thinking back like 38 years, so I'm thinking between a time frame of maybe 10 or 10:30.
All right. Have you ever received any help for your alcohol or your drugs?
Yes, I've been to Living in Balance. It's a substance abuse program. I'm thinking I went to Living in Balance 1 and 2, and they deal with all types of drugs, alcohol, tobacco products, and heroin and cocaine. I completed those courses.
Okay. What did you get from those courses? What did you learn?
I learned that to take accountability and responsibility. That drugs is not an option, meaning that doesn't justify your actions. Once you, decide to use drugs, it's not an excuse.
Okay. Did you finish your sex offender classes, all of it?
I went through the 4 phrases, and I'm currently, even right now, enrolled at Elaine Hunt's here. So no, I haven't finished. I just did phase 1 here, and I have 2, 3, and 4 left remaining.
So you retaking it, is what you're telling me?
Yes, I am. Yes, sir.
Why
But he
would
does,
you retake it? You didn't get nothing out of
he
it?
does have certificate. I apologize, I interrupted. He does have certificates of completion, from the, sexual offender classes. He was
What did you learn?
relocated.
Okay, what did you learn from sex offender classes?
Okay, once again, I've learned that, you know, taking accountability and, you know, knowing that when a person, you know, says stop, that's exactly what it means to stop, you know, first and foremost, you know, and that it's wrong, and
Okay.
that's,
You're telling me you learned all of that, and I see you have a whole bunch of 21E write-ups, and you've had 3 since your treatment. What's the deal?
okay, the last one that I had, I'm thinking like 4 years ago, maybe, you know, some of that nature. And I know this is, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, discredit anyone, but the last 21 I had, and I went to the lab to give blood, and the lab technician was drawing the blood from my right arm, and she had missed the vein several times, and she told me to hold the swab, which I did, and she taped the right arm. So I thought she was finished, so I proceeded to leave, and she wasn't finished, and she wanted to draw the blood from my left arm. At that particular time, I told her, I said, ma'am, you missed the veins in my right arm, so, you know, I don't want to give it out of my left arm. And she told me that she was having a bad blank date. So I replied, well, if you was having a bad day,
Well, what does that
at
have to do
home,
with 21E?
and I know now that happened about 4 or 5 years ago. So she proceeded and wrote me up on a Rule 5 aggravated disobedience, and a 3, a defiance, and a 21E. That's exactly how it happened.
How did that lead to a 21E? That's not my understanding of a 21E.
That's what I'm talking about, sir. And I took the write-up and mailed it home to my family, to my daughter. And I did that.
Oh, could you tell me what you got on that write-up?
Yes, sir. What was it? That Mr. Freeman? The last 21 that he had?
Yes, sir. You might not have it, Warden. I see where it's expunged.
No, the one that I'm looking at is from March of 2017. That's the
Okay, what
last
is
one that I'm
it?
seeing. There was another one that was expunged after that. This one is from Captain Anthony said he observed
We've lost connection. No, we're back.
Taylor moving his hand in a back and forth motion, masturbating.
Okay, thank you. What about on 3/18/19? What was your number one for? Your contraband write-up. What was the contraband?
Okay, that was during the time frame I was in Dunyon on the last write-up. They said I didn't get to secure and store my property, so they said they found a cigarette lighter, you know, that I purchased from the canteen. But by the law changing, they said it was contraband. I only used a lighter to, you know, like when I be sewing, I'll burn thread with it. So I never smoke. So that's all I knew about that.
All right, you have a low risk. What kind of club you belong to? Anything?
Most of the clubs I participate in is biblical. I'm a veteran. I'm a part of the veteran club from Angola, you know, because I've done the bulk of my time there. You know, I've only been here for several years. And outside of that, most of it is Christianity, attending church and, you know, etc. I haven't joined any other clubs, you know, but I do go to church on a regular basis.
And if I may interject, Mr. Taylor is here based on medical issues as well. I think he's in
That's
the
right.
medical wing, so he's not going to be as
I want
active.
to know where does he stand with his medical issues?
He is, and I'll let him talk to you about it if he doesn't fill in, and that's the only reason why I interrupt, because I've talked about his medical condition before and the surgeries he's had on his brain. But I'm gonna let him speak on his medical issues, and if something's not covered, I've reviewed it and I'll cover that.
Okay, so starting with my medical issues, would you want to know the first? I had a heart aneurysm in 2005, and from there, prostate cancer, and in 2020, and then they found, on top of that, they found these brain tumors, several of them, 2 in my brain and 1 in the side of my neck. The first one, they removed it from my pituitary gland, which is located at the base of my brain. And on my frontal lobe here just recently, about 14 months ago, they removed one from my frontal lobe right here. And they are monitoring the one that's in the side of my neck, the right side of my neck. So not often this as an excuse, but it does impairs my ability to process information thoroughly, and my hearing is impaired on my right side, in my right ear. So I don't want you guys to misconstrue some of my answers as you know, as a mistruth or lie, you know, because I know those are ground for denial.
And Mr. Taylor is currently, my understanding, on the tumor that is remaining in his neck. I think he goes to UNC in New Orleans twice a year, every 6 months, I believe, and I don't want to mistake that.
I was going like every 3 months. Now they just put it to every
6 months for monitoring of that. And the one on his pituitary gland, they removed most of it, but they also monitored that one. He received radiation for the prostate cancer, and they currently are still monitoring that as well. and those are his current medical conditions. The heart aneurysm was the first in 2005. The prostate, and please, I'm going from notes, was 2020. The first tumor removal was 2019, and he's had a second, and they are now, 14 months ago, he had that second tumor removal at Our Lady of the Lake. And like I said, in the neck tumor, they're monitoring it by transport, I believe, every 6 months, because his medical conditions are shifting in New Orleans.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, you have plenty of law enforcement opposition. You also have opposition from the victim, Ms. Watson's daughter. Warden, you have anything to say?
No, sir, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, I have no further.
Now we'll hear from Mr. Kenny Cox.
Do I go here?
Yes.
I'm State Representative Ken Cox. I know Carlton Taylor from kid, started school and graduated high school together. He served in the military. He was a great guy. I believe he served 38 years. And I worked on a lot of legislation to help us work these getting people out of jail. I personally feel that he's missed all of his children's life. He's thoroughly paid for what has taken place. He's I didn't even know that he had used some cocaine. That stuff is brain altering, and I don't know what took place, but he admits to his crime. And I think that we as the people, and me myself, personally think he's done his time. And of course, we spend a lot of money taking care of bringing people, keeping them in jail. At this time, it would be great if we could possibly let him spend his last year with his family. And he'll go through his training and all his programs. My heart goes out to those who this happened to. I met the lady. I met her brothers. They were all sad that it was time. But before they wrote their statements, they passed away, 1, 2, 3, right? And so I personally that this has happened, and I appreciate what you guys do. I mean, being in the legislature, I understand y'all. Hopefully, you understand now. This is my last year, and I'm being honest. I'm ready to go home. I've done my tour of duty. I was in the Army. I was at 9/11, and I did a whole bunch of other things. And some say that you're a hero. I tell them that I'm just a country boy from Louisiana. Carlton Taylor was a serviceman. He had never done anything before this happened. He was an upstanding citizen, had a great job. And all of that came to an abrupt ending one night, drinking and drugs. And it's not a new story, but it's a sad story. I think he understands where he is. He may have, I listened to him talk. He's not as sharp as he used to be. But some people tell me maybe I'm not as sharp as I used to be. Put some time in, we all. But anyway, I don't want to belabor it any longer. I apologize to those who might think that I'm asking for something that he doesn't deserve a time served. I will thank y'all for the time and opportunity. I spent a lot of time at at Leavenworth, not Leavenworth, excuse me, I didn't do it in time. See, get a little mixed up, but anyway, down in Angola. And I met with the veterans. And I put together a veterans program. Most of those guys came back bent and broke. And so they may never get out, but I work my best to help them. And I'm also the chairman of veterans, military and veterans affairs. So we work a lot to help veterans. So I hope that if he gets out, that we'll be able to also help him with our veterans programs. Thank you all, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Ms. Valerie Cox?
To you, the honorable members of the Louisiana Board of Pardon. I am Dr. Valerie Cox. I'm the oldest daughter of Carlton Taylor, DOC number 113532. I am 49 years old. I was 11 when my dad became incarcerated. I am a licensed ordained minister, a certified counselor, and a school board member currently serving as president of my board. I have made the 4-hour drive to visit my dad multiple times during his imprisonment. I have kept money on his books on a monthly basis, and I talk to him on a weekly basis over the phone or via emails. I remember my dad as being a loving, caring, protective, and hardworking father when I was a child. He and my mother had me when they were both very young, following their senior year of high school. However, my dad did not hesitate to accept responsibility for me and my mother, and he married my mother and established and enlisted in the United States Army after he graduated so he could provide for us. My dad has expressed his remorse and feelings of guilt so many times, almost every time that I speak to him, he expresses his remorse, his guilt for the impact that his crime had on my mother, my siblings, and me. And still today, he always tells me that he is so sorry for the crime he committed and the way that it affected us growing up. And we always assure him as Christians with unconditional love for him in our hearts that we have forgiven him completely. And there's no need to continuously apologize over and over and over for a crime that he committed almost 40 years ago. I believe that my dad, Carlton, is definitely a rehabilitated man. He has taken the initiative to complete sex offender rehabilitation, anger management, and countless spiritual and educational courses offered through the correctional system over all the years. He is wise beyond his years now, and he imparts great advice into my two sons, his grandsons, about life lessons that he had to learn the hard way. He has suffered several major life-threatening medical conditions during his incarceration, including open heart surgery, 2 brain surgeries on 2 separate occasions to remove tumors from his brain. He's had seizures. He didn't mention that, but he had seizures also leading up to the removal of those tumors. He's had chemotherapy for prostate cancer, which is currently in remission. He is blessed to still be alive, and I'm so thankful for the life-saving medical care that he has received as an inmate.
Ms. Cox, we're going to need you to wrap it up.
Sure. I will conclude by saying my dad is a born-again Christian, and he relies heavily on his faith in God to cope with his health issues in prison life. I feel he's completely reformed. He will not be a threat to anyone in any way. He's 68 years old now. He was almost 30 when he was convicted I have been there for him throughout his incarceration of 38 years. And if granted a pardon, I will continue to be there to help him. My husband and I are willing to provide him with a job, home, food, clothing, money, and whatever is necessary for him to have a successful transition into the free world. He also has a wonderful family support system back home that are all equally willing to help and assist him as well. My dad missed all of my graduations as well as my siblings.
Ma'am,
He missed
ma'am,
our
we need- we need-
birthdays.
We need to wrap you.
And
You've got a
he missed
bunch
the
of
birth
cases.
of all of his grandchildren and so many numerous occasions that we physically needed him to be there. I humbly ask you, each member of the Louisiana Board of Pardons, to see the changed, rehabilitated man that I see today, and from your hearts, grant him a pardon so he can enjoy the rest of
Thank
his
you, ma'am.
life with his family.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration.
Now we'll hear from the opposition, Ms. Scheider.
Thank you, sir. Can y'all hear me?
Ma'am, we can. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to be heard by the board. I have had the opportunity to review the application that Mr. Taylor has prepared and to listen today to those who spoke in favor of his release. I would like to speak in opposition. With respect to Mr. Taylor's attorney, I would point out that when Mr. Freeman was asking about the other offense for which he was charged similarly, the response was that he had been found innocent of those charges. And with respect, there is a great deal of difference between having charges dismissed and being found innocent. And what happened in that particular case was that the charges were dismissed, I believe, in large part in reliance upon the defendant, Mr. Taylor, being sentenced to a life sentence here in the 42nd. I was struck, first of all, by Mr. Taylor's application when he indicated to the board that he has served enough time for his crimes. And I would respectfully disagree with that. I would disagree with Mr. Taylor, who put that in his application. I would disagree with Mr. Cox, who indicated that, as well as Mrs. Cox, who indicated that during their speeches. I think that the appropriate time for Mr. Carlton Taylor to serve for his crimes has previously been decided. It's been decided by multiple people, not myself. It's been decided by the legislature, who determined, first of all, that life without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence was the appropriate sentence for his crime. It was determined that that was the appropriate sentence for him by the jury who convicted him of charges who carried that length of incarceration without benefit as a penalty. And it was determined also by the judge who sentenced him to a term of life in prison without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. It is not for Mr. Taylor, his family, or with respect, anyone else to determine that those people were wrong. They have determined that life without benefit was the appropriate sentence for him for what he did. He went into a person's home without permission with the intent to commit a crime. And once inside, he was armed with a weapon, used that weapon to intimidate and force a woman against her will, Ms. Watson, to submit to intercourse with him against her will, and then threatened her that he would kill her if she told anyone. And as Mr. Freeman ably pointed out, he was also charged with a very similar offense in a neighboring jurisdiction right around the same time, all of which arose out of the position of trust that Mr. Taylor had been put in as a result of his employment as a meter reader. Respectfully, members of the Board of Pardon and Parole, the defendant, Mr. Taylor, in this case, has basically shown you during the questioning the same story that he served up to the victims and the victims' families and to the judicial system. When questioned about his responsibility and his accountability for his crimes, he continued to say, "It wasn't my fault." When questioned about his problems while incarcerated, his write-ups for various reasons, Mr. Taylor's responses were the same. "It's not my fault. It didn't happen that way. That person was wrong. They were lying." I think that shows that Mr. Taylor has not learned what he espoused to have learned from the various programs that he has attempted or completed while incarcerated. He has not learned that to accept responsibility or accountability for his own actions, and that is true even after 30-something years of being incarcerated. It is for those reasons and for the fact that the victim and the victim's family have relied upon the fact that they believed that Mr. Taylor would serve his natural life in prison without benefit, that we would ask that you deny his application and allow him to continue to serve that sentence that everybody in the judicial system has relied upon all of these years. Thank you.
We appreciate your comments. Mr. Taylor, is there anything you'd like to say before we turn it over to Ms. Jackson?
He's saying, is there anything you would like to say before they turn it over to me to speak? He's asking you what you would like.
No, I have no further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Ms. Jackson, you want to wrap it up for us?
Yes, I'm not sure in what capacity Ms. Snyder is speaking in. Is she a victim's family member or is she speaking on behalf of the district?
He's an assistant DA, I believe.
I'm the assistant
Okay, so
district.
it's not a family. Okay, I apologize. When I first heard it, we're cutting in and out. I thought you were a family member. I don't believe, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm looking at the record that a family member has submitted an opposition to this hearing today, and as far as being part, I think we've heard testimony from Representative Cox, Mr. Cox, that he had actually spoken with the family and the victim before she passed, and they believed that Mr. Taylor had served his time. At some point during the service of his time, he wrote a letter to the victim apologizing. That was in the first year for his actions. Mr. Taylor, I heard something completely different today. Mr. Taylor didn't say that it was not his responsibility. He took full responsibility for what occurred in this incident. He also talked about being remorseful. At any time, I think he was questioned about one write-up, although another was mentioned. He gave his understanding of what happened during that write-up. But irrespective of that write-up, after 38 years in a facility, to just say that Mr. Taylor's judge and jury's time given to him it will be substantiated. It means we would need no Louisiana Board of Pardons, because that line of thought would mean that at no time an offender in the state of Louisiana, because someone decided your time at a trial, it wouldn't be necessary for us to have a Board of Pardons. It wouldn't. Why would it be? If our legal argument every time someone came before this Board of Pardons is that the jury and the judge gave that person the time and they decided 38 years ago what time that person should serve, then why would there be a statute creating?
Jackson, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the pardon board is clearly aware of what the law is and why we are here. We understand that. The fact that a jury,
Okay, and I was just,
the judge rendered a verdict, that's that's beyond us. Our job today is to determine who Mr. Taylor is today and what he's accomplished. So that's what I'd like you to get to, if you would.
Right. And I'm addressing that, and I was only responding to the argument of the opposition. I apologize. I know meant to intend. While incarcerated, prior to his medical condition, Mr. Taylor went through a number of rehabilitative measures, not just the sex offender certificates in the 4 phases he completed. He also completed a carpentry degree, some more degrees from the Baton Rouge Community College. He went through extensive drug rehabilitation. During his time of incarceration, he's also was, before he came here to this facility under medical conditions, as he mentioned, he has received some biblical certificates and still attends those classes while here. Mr. Taylor has done everything that we would consider, including the Professional Academy of Sex Offender Treatment Program, and he has entered it again. And someone asked, why would you enter that again? For an inmate who is in in such medical condition of his, there are limited resources for him to better himself. So entering that program again is a way to keep him where he needs to be. And that's why he re-entered. He is on no duty here, so he cannot hold a job because of his medical condition. If you, and I'm sure you have, looked at all of the programs Mr. Taylor has completed prior to his medical condition, and some even after his medical condition, including anger management, the class on learner, taking personal responsibility, another anger management class, his participation in Church of Christ seminar, and I won't keep going through those, the Strength for Journey. When you look at Mr. Taylor's extensive rehabilitative background, and we stop there, because at some point the Louisiana prison system is set up to rehabilitate, and if at all possible, set up for re-entry of an offender who has done sufficient time, as well as an inmate who has completed certain rehabilitation programs. Mr. Taylor has done that, and he's expressed remorse, not just for his family, throughout this process. Because of those reasons, I would ask that the board would render a favorable decision for Mr. Taylor. And I understand that there will be some opposition from those who have prosecuted him. I think we stand our ground on what we stand our ground on. But at the end of the day, as you said, Mr., and I'm sorry, I cannot even read these things. And I turned my 2020 vision around. I understand your job. And I believe what has happened in his 38 years is that he has rehabilitated himself. He does not present as a harm to society. He does have the wherewithal and the means through his family to re-enter society without being a drain on society, which is all of the things that we look at. So I ask for a favorable vote on Mr. Taylor after serving 38 years, being of the age of 68 with a number of medical conditions in the facility. Thank you.
Warren Bordelon,
Yes, sir.
is there a reason why the Department of Corrections is making Mr. Taylor retake sex offender treatment? Because I see where he's currently enrolled.
Yeah, no, sir. I don't think we're making him. I think that he finished sex offender treatment years ago, back in 2007, I think is when he completed it. And I think it was his choice to retake it. I'm not seeing anywhere where we didn't recommend it.
I see where he completed it, 204.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I see where he completed his sex offender treatment in 2004. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I think the final phase, the 4th phase, he completed in August of 2007. He started taking it, I think, in 2004.
All right. And to clear the record, there is victim opposition. In this case, the daughter of the victim submitted an impact statement saying that she was adamantly opposed. And the son, I think his name is Chetwood, was contacted, but he's incarcerated on a forceful rape charge and is presently incarcerated and did not make a comment.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, first off, I know you've had some medical problems, but I don't think you're honest with me at all today. There was the other charge that was brought about, very similar situation, and it was the victim that backed off once you got your life sentence. Your disciplinary history is bad. 11 21Es, that's all sexual, so that makes me worry. And my vote today is to deny.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Ms. Jackson?
All right, Mr. Taylor, let's just say I was disappointed by your responses today. I really don't think you were honest with the board about what happened. But I do look at your age, your health issues, and the length of time you've been incarcerated. Because of your health issues, I don't believe that you continue to pose a threat to the community. And so my vote today would be to recommend a commutation to the governor.
Thank you. Mr. Roche?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Taylor, when I sit in this chair, I look for rehabilitation. And I don't see that this morning. You have 11 aggravated sex offenses between the years of 2002 and 2017. You completed sex offender treatment in 2007. You committed your last aggravated sex offense at the age of 62, 6 years ago. Based upon the victim opposition and the lack of rehabilitation and the general disciplinary conduct, my vote is to deny your request.
Mr. Taylor, you have 2 votes to deny, 1 vote to grant. Your vote would have to be unanimous today. My vote would be because of your age, because of your medical history. I would also recommend a commutation. But you've got 2 votes to grant, 2 votes to deny. Your request for a pardon has been denied. Good luck to you, sir.